All right, good morning everyone. Thank you for coming to this session. I hope you're all ready for day 2 of Commsverse. So I'm going to be doing a presentation on the direct routing opportunity. So a quick sort of agenda of what we're going to go through today, bit of an introduction to myself, talking a bit about direct routing and why some people find it difficult, what those sort of roadblocks are to adoption. Looking at the solution that we've put together to help make it easier for you, for your customers, to adopt direct routing as an alternative to some of the other options from Microsoft. Then we're going to look at a real-world use case example of one of the more complicated setups that we do for customers. And then finally, a bit of a Q&A. So, my name is Ben Merrills. I've worked in telecoms since about 2001. I've worked for a number of ISPs, some data center providers, but the majority of them have all been in some way telecoms companies. By trade, I'm a developer, and I really like to get interested in sort of active in all sorts of areas of development. And in 2013, I started my own SIP provider company. That company expanded from sort of numbering and SIP trunking to providing direct routing as a service. We also have now a complete suite of international numbering as well. And at the end of last year, we were acquired by our now parent company, Jola Cloud Solutions. We're also a gold sponsor of Commsverse. If you've got any questions that you don't want to ask now or you want to come and have a chat with us at the end, you can come and find us on booth 8. So, what are the roadblocks to direct routing adoption? I mean, the main one really is the fact that it's based off a manual PowerShell process. A lot of people don't like that. They find that sort of more scary in terms of either if they're adopting it themselves or they're trying to resell a direct routing solution. So, the sort of general sort of way to get past that is to try and automate that component of direct routing. So if you want to take direct routing, you have to run a number of PowerShell commands that add PSTN online gateway to your Teams tenant. You have to add telephone numbers to users. All of those use commandlets in the Microsoft Teams PowerShell module. And not everyone in the business, not every one of your customers may be confident in doing that. So what areas of that process can we potentially automate? Well, we can automate pretty much everything in terms of direct routing. So direct routing itself, all the components for setting up direct routing inside a Microsoft Teams tenant can be automated using our provisioning tools. But on top of that, we can also automate things like recording policies. So if you are looking, or your customers are looking at using compliance, or what's now called policy-based call recording, i.e. recording of any call on Microsoft Teams, we can also automate all of that policy setup and assigning those policies to users. We can also automate that in-life management as well. So you may well be aware that direct routing isn't well supported in the Teams admin center. Other alternatives to direct routing are far better supported. So in terms of things like calling plans, you can go into the Teams admin center, you can buy one, you can assign it to a user. In terms of Operator Connect, you can go in, you can pick a carrier that you want to work with, and you can take those numbers and you can assign them to a user. But with direct routing, those options don't exist inside the Teams admin center. So what most customers need is a single way of managing that in-life process, regardless of how they've acquired numbers or how they're using direct routing. So all 3 areas of that we've covered with the solution that we're providing, and we basically have sort of bundled that all in to something called SIP Manager. And SIP Manager is our provisioning and in-life management platform that can be taken as a branded or a white label product. So those adoptions to roadblocks to adoption, as we said, you need that knowledge of PowerShell, and your customer may not even have PowerShell installed on their machine. They may not have the Microsoft Teams commandlets. They may not want to give you access to their Microsoft Teams tenant to go and do that for them. That might not be, they may consider that a security risk. So when we've been looking at how we can automate the PowerShell side of things, it all uses OAuth tokens. So none of it is sharing credentials with you or with us. It's all done using Microsoft OAuth. We go away, we get graph tokens, we get PowerShell tokens, we use those, and then we can provision those scripts, those PowerShell scripts within our platform. So, the second one is, well, who's going to manage it? Well, potentially, anyone who can log into our platform who's been given the correct access permissions into Microsoft Teams then has the ability to go away, manage those numbers, manage this assignment to users, and manage that broader adoption within the business. Because of the restrictions around direct routing numbers showing up in the Microsoft Teams Admin Center, all of this is done through our platform. So we can show you a state of numbers, we can show you which users are in the platform that have the correct licensing information. So what used to be called the phone system license, which is now called the Teams phone license, I believe, and so on and so forth. So we can show you all those users that have the appropriate licensing, all the telephone numbers you have in your estate, as well as those that you've not yet assigned to someone, and that applies to resource groups as well. And you can manage that then through one interface without having to worry about going into the Teams Admin Center, looking which users have got numbers or haven't. So one of the questions we get asked is, well, why shouldn't we look at just using something like Operator Connect instead? Microsoft have already mitigated a lot of this. Operator Connect is not orientated for anything other than a direct relationship. You or your customer have to have a direct relationship with the carrier. But also, if you want to take numbers that carrier doesn't support, you then have to have a relationship with another carrier. So you end up bringing in multiple Carrier Connect suppliers into your Teams Admin Center, different pricing, different invoicing. So there's a big advantage to look at something like direct routing, where we can bring all of those services in through one supply chain and direct it, instead of being done through the Teams Admin Center, being done through us. So why is it better? So obviously we can automate the direct routing provisioning, and we've mentioned we can also automate the policy call recording as well. And because we've got the in-life management, all of that's visible through the portal. But the really key thing here is if you or your customer needs accountability or auditing, if someone runs that PowerShell command themselves, just on their laptop, just before they get onto a flight, they're going somewhere, who's going to hold them accountable to that? No one knows who ran that. It's just another command that's been run inside that Microsoft Teams environment. Whereas with the automation, we can completely audit everything. So we know who logged in. We know who issued those updates to that user or to re-provision some resource. Every command, every part of the script that we run is audited as well. So we can provide you with a full chain of all the information that was run. And because it's the same scripts that we run with just different parameters in them based on you or your tenant or your customer, we know that that script is going to be exactly the same as the 10,000 scripts we've run before it. There's no difference. It's all repeatable. It's all manageable. And of course, we're the ones who are maintaining which version of PowerShell modules, for example, we're using. You don't have to worry about the fact that on the 15th of January, Microsoft deprecated everything below version 4 of the Microsoft Teams PowerShell module, and everything stopped working. Because it didn't, we just carried on working because we'd already done all those changes under the hood. So SIP Manager is sort of our interface that sits on top of this infrastructure. So it's got a fully automated direct routing provisioning process. We've mentioned that in-life tenant management. We've got the number management, which means we can provide in real time UK and international telephone numbers. But more than that, we can also provide two-way numbers as well, which guarantees in-country caller presentation, and where available, also emergency services breakout. So they are services that are directly targeted at the kind of people who are going to be using Microsoft Teams as a dial tone replacement. They can then take those numbers, knowing that if they buy a number in France or in Portugal, they can present into that country with regulatory compliance. But if they also need to, and where available, we also have access to the emergency services as well. And we also support porting in the majority of the countries on our supported list as well. So if you've got a customer who may already have an estate of legacy PBX or SIP in that country, and they're looking to migrate onto Microsoft Teams, then we can offer that one-stop shop solution where they can take Microsoft Teams, take direct routing, port those in-country numbers across, and know that they're going to be able to use them in exactly the same way they did with their original SIP provider in-country. So one of the areas where we've tried to differentiate ourselves as well is looking at how we price and model the solutions we have. So we have two sort of key different areas. We have a per seat price. That's the most standard, the most common. That includes things like bundles, where you can take international minutes and so on and so forth. You've got a set cost, per user, depending on the features they're taking. But if you want to play the aggregation game, you have a large estate or multiple estates of users, you might want to, for example, look at an aggregated channel offering, which gives you the ability to take a set number of concurrent calls from us in our direct routing environment, but aggregate those across multiple tenants. And finally, we've always had SIP recording in our platform. We're predominantly a SIP wholesale company. When we launched our direct routing solution a couple of years ago, obviously that was the first thing we did. What we realized was people wanted to know a lot more about the calls that were going on, not just the direct routing calls that they had. So quite quickly, we added what was then called compliance call recording, I believe is now called policy-based call recording, which means that you can record any call within the Microsoft Teams environment, whether that be a direct routing call, a Teams one-to-one call, a meeting, and that policy can be applied per user. And the reason it used to be called compliance call recording is there are different levels at which you can set it. So you can say, for example, for compliance reasons, let's say you're a financial services company, every call this person makes or receives must be recorded. Then if the bot isn't in that call, the compliance isn't met, and therefore that call cannot take place. And you can grade that policy, so all the way down to my customer can make a call, it would be, it would be great if the bot was there, all the way to the strictest level of compliance. So this is a quick overview of our provisioning process. We've basically broken it down into a really nice wizard. Allows you or your customer to complete the management process of provisioning a tenant in a few steps. So we built into that the fully automated direct routing provisioning. There are always going to be the few customers who do not want us to run the PowerShell in their environment on their behalf. Therefore, this process does actually allow you to specify that you want a manual process as well, in which case we'll give you the script if you want. We will give you the generated script we would have run, and you can run it yourself, or we can give you, you can see, for example, every page has a sort of a help link, takes you to sort of a full guide of how to do it yourself from a manual provisioning process. Now, furthermore, in this process, you can buy your numbers. So if you want to set up direct routing and buy those numbers in line, because you're going to probably want to provision some users at the same time, then that's exactly what happens here. You don't need to have contacted us beforehand and pre-order some numbers. Those numbers can be purchased, loaded into the system, and available to provision by the time you get to the step 8 to sync everything up back to Microsoft Teams. Now, once you have provisioned your tenant, obviously some of the key things then is how do you manage it in life? So the in-life management portal basically allows you to go in, see the users you've configured. It also allows you to see the numbers that you have and have not configured, as well as the internal calling plan. So that might be the bundles that you are taking from us to provide the call connectivity. When you come onto this screen, one of the options you have is to log directly back into Microsoft. That's optional. You don't have to do that. But if you do, we'll tell you what users are on that tenant, whether they're a resource account or a Teams user, and if they have a license that is compatible with direct routing. So then you can build up a process where either you or your customers can see all of this in one place. The Teams Admin Center is for managing Teams. SIP Manager is for managing your direct routing estate. So as I mentioned earlier, we are a UK regulated carrier with Ofcom. So we have our own UK geographic, non-geographic free phone numbers. We also do virtual mobile numbers. So that means we can port mobile numbers or provision brand new mobile numbers into our SIP core and deliver them onto Microsoft Teams. The other great thing is they support two-way text messaging. So you can send text messages from our platform, but you can also receive them as well. So a great use case there, for example, is maybe you have people who are doing a marketing company, and they really like the idea that all their calls are going to come from mobile numbers, and because that's the highest acceptance rate of a call. They can present out as mobile numbers. If anyone calls it back, they come directly back into Microsoft Teams. If someone text messages it, we can display that in a Microsoft Teams message flow as well. If each one of your users obviously has a different mobile number, you can relate that then to conversations that are between specific users and specific customers. On the international side, international numbering can be difficult. So we provide sort of two different key products for international numbering. The first one is an inbound only. So that means in about 160 plus countries, we can give you geographic, non-geographic, and sometimes in most toll-free numbers that are able to receive calls only. No guaranteed presentation back in country. But if you're using them for things like a contact center number going onto an IVR or a queue, generally speaking, that's perfectly acceptable. The second is those two-way numbers. So that's where you're definitely going to want the user that you've provisioned on Microsoft Teams, CLI, to be able to present back into country. So with the two-way product, you can guarantee that in-country presentation, the emergency services access where available, and that is local in-country breakout. We also manage all the regulatory requirements for you. So when you come to purchase those numbers, we're going to tell you your customer needs to be in the same geographic region in Germany, for example, as the number you're trying to buy. And these are the documents you're going to need to upload to us to prove that we'll send to the regulator to get your numbers authorized. And obviously, if you're going to record calls, you're going to want to be able to listen to them. So we have a complete interface for our Teams call recording platform. It's also the same interface that's used for our SIP call recording platform as well. And because that bot is assigned to users, so it doesn't have to be all the users on your platform, you can select which ones you want to have call recording. You can come into that interface. We've got a user level, we've got a team leader level, and we've got a data controller level. So the user level basically means I can log in, review my calls. Team leader level means you can log in and review your team's calls. Data controllers can go in and see all calls, but they can do things like archive them off or mark them as, for GDPR compliance that they need to be removed from the platform. Maybe you've had a request from the user. You can see also, as part of the call information, who was involved in that call, because they're not one-to-one conversations. It's not just direct routing. It could be team calls. It could be that morning meeting call you have. So each person that is on the bot gets their own instance of the call, because, of course, I may be on the call 10 minutes before one of my colleagues, therefore my call recording would be longer. The other thing we can do is you can share those call recordings, you can download those call recordings, but you do it in a controlled way, and we allow that whole thing to be auditable. So you can see who has gone on and listened to a call, who has shared a call, how that call has subsequently been accessed. We basically give you a share link. That link you can send off, so you may want to send it to your legal team for some reason. You can see when the legal team have logged in, listened to that call, how many times they've listened to that call. So that basically provides you with a really good way of, once you have got those call recordings, making sure you're compliant. You can store those call recordings for up to 7 years, making you, compliant for things like financial services bodies. And that really sort of gives an additional level of product that we can add to direct routing. So it's not just call recording of the direct routing, but it's call recording of the whole Teams environment. So as I mentioned earlier, there's those two pricing models as well. We've got the per seat pricing. So if you want to just basically be able to take a calling plan with us, UK, let's say unlimited minutes, or you want to take a UK unlimited minutes with a 200-minute international bolt-on, you can do that. You've got a fixed price. You know how much it's going to cost you per user. But if you've got, 100 or 500 or 1,000 seats, maybe spread across multiple tenants, that model might not be so commercially viable to you anymore. And that's where the aggregated wholesale channel model comes in, because it allows you to take a pool of channels from us and then aggregate them across all the tenants on the platform. And you then get to decide your own contention ratio. And we have seen situations where customers have taken that and seen 25, 30, even maybe 50 to 1 on direct routing, because of course most of those interactions that are happening inside Microsoft Teams, and they're never breaking out onto direct routing. So we've got a use case here of a real customer that we've dealt with in the last 6 months. Financial services and investment firm. They've got 200 seats and they're split between 3 different areas in the world. They're looking to use Microsoft Teams. They're looking for a call recording compliance solution for some of the users on their platform, but not all of them. Because they're split over geographically diverse locations, they need to make sure they can take international numbering, and they need to be able to present back into country as those numbers with also emergency services. And they want to be able to do this through a single carrier and a single user interface. They don't want to have to deal with things like Operator Connect, where they've got one carrier that will provide them with 10 regions and another carrier that will provide them with a different 10 regions. But most importantly for them, they also want this to be auditable. If someone comes along and says, how was this user added? How was call compliance administered to this user? When? All of that information is available to them. So we are able to offer the Teams call recording solutions on 3 and 7 years fixed terms, because we can do it at different terms for each user. So if you've got an accounts team where you only want them to have their calls recorded for 1 year, but a financial services team who need their calls recording for 7 years, that's completely supported in that onboarding wizard. They were able to take unlimited UK bundles for those that were in the UK, and then take 2-way calling bundles for those that were outside of the UK. They were able to use SIP Manager for the numbering, tenant management, and all that provisioning and in-life. And of course, they didn't have to worry about PowerShell because they were using the fully automated solution with that auditing built in. So that's a quick overview of what we do at Jola and how we help our customers. If any of you have any questions, I would really love to hear from you. Thank you. Yes? Do we need a...
About the report?
Yeah.
Is there any way that portal where the end users log in to actually listen to the recording, can that be customized?
So it's completely sort of white labeled. It's not branded in any way. But the thing that I forgot to mention here is everything that we have, everything that you saw there in that wizard is all built off our own APIs. So we can completely open that out to you, and if you wanted to create your own interface to it, you can do. There is literally an API for everything we've mentioned here, even down to being able to run your own custom PowerShell scripts within that Teams environment. You can use our API, upload your script, give it request the credentials for your user, and we'll go away and run that through the automated platform. Yeah, go.
About the recording.
Yeah.
Is that continuous recording, or is it a record on demand?
So because it's policy or compliance call recording, it will start as soon as you join a call. If it's on you, it will follow you. But it can be paused, and you can give reasons for pausing it as well. So you can say, for example, I'm pausing this recording for confidentiality reasons, or I'm pausing this call for PCI compliance. And we'll mark in.
Would that be something that you pause in? Is that kind of within Teams, or is that on your interface?
So at the moment, it's all in our interface. However, we are in the process at the moment of embedding that interface directly into Microsoft Teams. It's sort of a bit legacy because obviously we had a call recording interface was there before we had the Teams compliance policy bot. So we've just utilized that, but we're now all uplifting all of that into Microsoft Teams as well. Thank you. Yes? So if you take the wholesale version of our platform, we do technically and always have had for a long time a sort of what we call Carrier Connect, not to be confused with Operator Connect, which allows you to bring in other carriers. It's not the most it is available and you can use it. We will charge you for transit across the platform and utilizing those things. We try to give the best possible offering ourselves in terms of the international side and our UK piece as well. But for customers who would really have a compelling argument for it, yes, we can do it.
Then another one.
Yes.
Right, within the Jola portal,
Yeah.
SIP-match portal,
Yeah.
obviously when we're provisioning seats with unlimited calls,
Yeah.
there are certain numbers like the premium numbers and ones that are a lot inclusive within the minute.
Yeah.
Is there any way, I know there's a limitation at the moment, but is this something that's in the roadmap in introducing spending caps that we take control?
So that's a good question. So obviously we have a number of fraud preventions already built in, but in this question is more about can you limit what destinations or how much they can spend in those destinations. So in the current platform, there is, if you are a wholesale customer, you can limit the overall spend on a 24-hour rolling basis of that tenant. In the next version that we're due to release in a couple of months, you can then take that slightly further and you can limit destinations, but we don't have a spend cap on those destinations. But it's a really interesting question and one that we can certainly look at. Cool. Anyone else? No, we all good? Well, thank you very much. It's been really a great pleasure to speak to you all today. Enjoy the rest of the show.